Welcome to Grade 7 Science class. Hello there! I'm very happy to see you in my class today. Our lesson is all about scientific method. Do you have any idea about scientific method? Great! So for this lesson, we're going to discover what is scientific method all about. Okay. In our lesson, we should focus on the following objectives. First, we need to demonstrate an understanding of scientific ways of acquiring knowledge and solving problems. We must perform a guided investigation involving community-based problem using locally available materials. And lastly, you need to describe the components of scientific investigation. Are you excited to learn? Wow, a very positive reaction. Before we begin, I want you to prepare these magical tools that we need to use in order for us to continue with our discussion. You must have this pen. Okay? You must prepare your writing pen. Also, you need to prepare your science notebook. And most especially, you need to prepare your science module. So, what is scientific method? Any idea? Wonderful! Well, that is closer to the answer. So let's define the scientific method. When we say scientific method, it involves series of processes. Okay? For experimentation that is used to explore observation and to answer question. So we need scientific method to answer problem or to answer question. Okay? So remember, if you're going to use scientific method, you always need to remember the processes and procedure. You have to go to the different process. You have to follow strictly the procedure for you to come up with the best result or for you to come up with the best answer to your problem. Okay? Scientists always use scientific method. Okay, this scientific method for scientists, scientific method is their lives. Okay? They need scientific method to answer questions or problem around the world. Like Francesco Redi. Do you know who is Francesco Redi? Francesco Redi is the handsome man here. Okay? He is an Italian scientist. Okay, who answer and give clear explanation about the spontaneity of living organism by designing a scientific experiment to test the spontaneous creation of maggots. Do you know what maggots is? A maggots is the larva of a fly. Okay? So, yung maggots is larva. When you say larva, it's like a worm. Okay? So, pag yung eggs na hatch and after a couple of days na develop, the eggs becomes now a larva, yung white na worm na nakita natin. So, it came from the flies. Okay? So what did Francesco Redi did? Okay? So, he placed fresh meats inside the 3 jars. So, do you see the red square here? So, the red square inside the jar represents the meat. So, he placed the fresh meat inside the 3 jars. So, the first jar left open. So, itong jar na isa, bukas, with the meat inside. The second jar is tightly sealed. Nakasealed siya, nakasaradong sarado, and the third jar is covered with cloth. Now, so he observed what will happen to the meat. Saan ba lalabas dyan yung maggot? Is it on the first jar, on the second jar, or on the third jar? So after a couple of days, okay, he noticed na yung meat is na decayed, or yung meat is nas dahan-dahang nabubulok. Now, okay, so what will happen now to the meat? Saan nga ba dyan lalabas yung larva? Saan nga ba dyan lalabas yung maggots? Very good. Okay, very well said. Okay, ang maggots ay lalabas obviously dito sa open jar. Why? Because yung flies ay malayang makakapunta dun sa meat. Sila ay mangingitlog dun sa meat, and eventually that eggs will become now larva or in the form of maggots. So that result is used by Reddy to disapprove the theory that maggots could be spontaneously generated from meat using controlled experiment. Because during the earlier time, people thought na kapag ang tao ay namatay, okay, so yung mga maggots, kapag nabulok na yung mga meat ng mga tao or certain animal, doon lalabas yung maggots. That's why Francesco Redi developed this type of experiment. So, nung nagawa niya yan, nagkaroon ng theory na hindi totoo yung spontaneous generation ng maggots. Okay, magkakaroon lang ng maggots if there is a fly na mangingitlog doon sa meat. Napatunayan niya yan in that experiment. Okay, so always, you have to take this important note. Aristotle is the one who introduced the use of scientific method. He is the first one who used the scientific method. And the first scientist who used the controlled group, okay, for comparison is no other than Francesco Redi. So these two men plays an important part of developing scientific method process. So we have to thank these two men for discovering scientific method and for discovering controlled experiment. Okay, I have here a simple trick for you to remember the sequence, okay, of scientific method. So you have to remember this acronym. Q, R, H, E, A, C, R. So you have to remember this sentence. Queen Rita hides emerald after Carla runs. So you have to remember the sentence. Queen Rita hides emerald after Carla runs. Q, okay, Q is equivalent to a question. R represents research or observation. H is for hypothesis, E is for experiment, A is for analyze, C is for conclusion, and run for recommendation. So you have to remember this sentence for you to be guided on the proper sequence, on the proper process of scientific method. Okay, so let's apply the trick that I teach you a while ago. Okay, so the first step is to ask question. We have to identify the problem. We have to ask question. So that is the beginning of scientific method. Okay. Second, you have to formulate hypothesis. You need to predict the possible answer to your problem. And you have to perform experiment. You need to test your hypothesis. Okay, and then the next one, you have to record and analyze your result. And you have to draw conclusion out of that result. And lastly, you need to communicate the result and share your findings. So these are the different steps in scientific method. Okay, so let's talk about the first part, which is the problem or question. Okay, so we must develop a question or problem that can be solved through experimentation. You need to look for a problem or question that can be tested through experimentation. A good question or problem must be testable. Okay? And a good problem must be in HATS form. The first step of scientific method is to ask question. You have to remember that. For you to ask question, you must know how to ask question. You must understand the characteristic of what good question is. Remember, a good question must be simple. Okay? Hindi siya pwedeng madaming sinusukat. It should be simple and specific. It must be testable. Kailangan siyang sukatin or kailangan siyang i-measure or kailangan siyang i-test through experimentation. It should be timely. And also, it should be in HATS form. Okay? I keep mentioning about HATS. So do you know what HATS is? That can be tested through experimentation. Not only that, you must produce a good question or even problem that must be testable. You need to produce a question or problem that can be testable. And most especially, a question that is in HATS form. Okay, so what is HATS? When we say HATS, HATS is an acronym, stands for High Order Thinking Skills. Okay, so this is the ability of a question or problem to apply, to analyze, to synthesize, to comprehend, to reason, and to evaluate question. If your question is in this form, therefore, you are using a good type of question. Okay? Always remember that your question must be testable. Your problem must be testable. Okay? Look for a problem that can be tested through experiment. Okay? So let's try a few questions and determine whether they are testable or not. For example, for number 1, what kind of seeds germinate faster? Large one or small one? Can we conduct experiment using the germination rate of the two seeds? If yes, then it is testable. Okay? Is it the question requires you to apply, to analyze, to synthesize, to reason out, and evaluate answer? If that is the case, therefore, it is testable. Okay? So, in this case, we are looking for the germination rate of these two seeds. Okay? So, what seeds germinate faster? Yung bang malaki ang buto o yung maliit ang buto? Okay? So, we can test this one through experimentation. Therefore, it is testable. Okay? I have here the next one. Try to answer the next question or problem. Where are dolphins found in the world? So what is this type of question? Is it testable or not testable? Very good. This is not a good question. So therefore, it is not testable. Okay? It is not a good question. Why? Simply because it is not testable. Okay? The question is very obvious. The answer to the question is very obvious because we know that all fishes, like dolphins, live inside the ocean. So therefore, that is a general fact. Okay, that dolphins live inside the ocean. So the answer is very predictable. So you don't need to test, you don't need to investigate, you don't need to analyze. So that is the reason why this question is not testable. Okay? Are you on the right track? Great. Are you an avid fan of BTS, especially this cute little guy? Okay, Jungkook. Okay, so let's find the problem here. The problem is, what BTS song is most played in 2019? What do you think is the answer? Is the question testable or not testable? Okay, it is not testable. Why? This example is also not testable because it is not timely. You want to know the most played BTS song last 2019, and we are now in 2020 unless you do background research for the year of 2019 for you to have your answer for your question. Okay? So it is not testable. Next one. How does changing the size of the kite affects its flight? So is this question testable or not testable? Hmm, great. It is testable. Why? Yes, because we can do the experiment to test which size of the kite or which size of the kite fly high. Is it the big one or the small one? Is it the biggest one or the smallest one? So you need to conduct an experiment to test, okay, the height of the flight of the kite. So therefore, it is testable. So remember, a good question must be testable. It must be simple. It must be direct. It must be in HUD's form. And also timely. Okay? So that is what a good question is. Okay? Sorry. Okay, let's put our knowledge of the scientific method to a realistic example that includes some of the terms you'll be needing to use and understand. Okay, I have here a short scenario of Jungkook and his grandmother. Okay, Jungkook watches his grandmother bake bread. He asks his grandmother what makes the bread rise. She explained that yeast releases gas as it feeds on sugar. Jungkook wondered if the amount of sugar used in the recipe will affect the size of the loaf bread. So, how does the amount of sugar affect the size of the loaf bread? So this is the problem that can be developed by Jungkook. Okay, so I have here the question. So what could be the final problem or question developed by Jungkook? So this is the answer. Okay, so let's discuss, okay, the type of questioning for A and C. For letter A, how does sugar affect the rising of the bread? Do you think that this letter A question is testable? Yes, it is testable, but it is not specific. What do you want to know about the sugar? Is it the weight of the sugar, different weight of the sugar, different type of the sugar, different brand of the sugar that will affect the rising of the bread? So it is not specific. Okay? For letter C, what confusing for letter C is the word factors. Okay, this word is very challenging because you're looking for many variables there's a lot of there is a lot of variables that you need to test for you to know the effect of that particular factors in the rising of the bread. So it's not simple, it is not specific, but it is complicated. Okay, in giving question or in identifying problems. Okay, so hindi ka dapat maging komplikado. As much as possible, kailangan maging simple and direct. And make sure that your problem can be tested. Okay, kung hindi naman siya kailangan i-test, it is not a good problem. Okay? So, kung madami kang dapat i-test, although, maganda yon because makukumpare mo yung result, but it's somewhat complicated. It takes time to come up with your result. So start a question na precise, na simple, na direct, na enhanced form, and timely. So you have to remember that characteristic. So that is the characteristic of a good question. Okay, we're done with the problem. We're done with identifying our question and problem. So we're now do the next step, which is do the background research. If you know the problem already, if you have question already, you have to do the background research. Okay, when you see the word research, okay, it means, to simplify, read and you have to read and study. It means not just to read to study, but you have to observe. And do background research, you have to observe. There are two ways for us to observe. We can observe using our senses. We can observe using different tools to describe something or a certain event. Okay? Not only that one, we can do the reading and writing. We can research or read some articles. We can read some journals or previous researches. Okay? And then, since we are now on the digital age, so most of us, okay, conduct researching or conduct observation through the use of internet. So, to make it short and simple, once you have the problem, you have to study your problem. It's not just making problem or looking for a problem. It's not just looking for a question. Okay? Hindi pwedeng matapos sa tanong. Hindi pwedeng matapos sa problema. Once you have problem, kailangan pag-aralan. Kailangan aralin yung magiging sagot doon sa problem at yung problema itself. Kaya, you have to do the background research. You have to do the background researching of that particular question or that particular problem.